Some places don't feel wrong at first. They just feel too quiet, like something is holding its breath. Ethan Cole eased his pickup into the gravel lot just past noon, the tires crunching softly under the weight of a sky that hadn't decided whether it wanted to snow or clear. The building stood ahead of him, low and pale, its windows reflecting nothing but a washed-out winter light. It looked clean, well-kept, almost comforting in the way places are designed to be when they want you to stop asking questions. Beside him, Rex didn't move. The German shepherd sat upright in the passenger seat, ears forward, body still, amber eyes fixed on the entrance as if he were listening to something far beyond the reach of human hearing. Ethan rested his hand on the steering wheel, thumb tapping once, twice, a habit he'd never quite lost. "We're here, buddy," he said quietly, though the words felt heavier than they should have. Rex didn't respond. That alone was enough to make Ethan pause. For 3 weeks, he had counted the days, marked them in his mind the way he used to track time on long deployments. Precise, disciplined, unyielding. 3 weeks since he had left Lily here, trusting the promise of care, of safety, of people who said they understood what she needed. 3 weeks since her small hand had squeezed his and her voice, soft but steady, had said, "You'll come back, right?" He swallowed, pushing the memory aside as he opened the truck door. Cold air rushed in, sharp and clean, carrying the faint scent of pine and something metallic he couldn't quite place. His boots hit the ground with a dull thud, gravel shifting beneath him. Rex jumped down more slowly than usual, landing without his usual eager energy. Instead, he stood close to Ethan's side, his posture alert, muscles coiled beneath his thick coat. They started toward the entrance together, the wind whispering across the empty lot, brushing against Ethan's jacket like a quiet warning. Halfway to the door, Rex stopped. Not hesitated, stopped. His body locked in place, one paw slightly lifted, ears sharply angled forward. A low sound rumbled in his chest, not quite a growl, not quite fear, something older, instinctive. Ethan took another step before realizing the leash had gone taut. He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. Rex. The dog didn't look at him. His gaze remained fixed on the building, but now it had shifted downward, toward the base of the structure, toward the concrete just beneath the front doors. Ethan followed that line of sight, frowning. There was nothing there. Just clean pavement, faint cracks, a welcome mat that read "Care begins here." The kind of phrase meant to reassure, to soften the edges of worry. But something about it felt rehearsed. Ethan exhaled slowly, the air fogging in front of him. "It's okay," he murmured, more to himself than to the dog. "We're just picking her up." Rex's ears flicked, but he didn't move. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to that single point. The door, the silence, the tension in the leash. Then, somewhere deep inside the building, something shifted. Not a sound exactly. More like a feeling, subtle, almost imagined. Ethan felt it in his chest before he understood it in his mind. Rex let out a single, soft bark. Short, controlled, deliberate. The kind of signal Ethan had learned never to ignore. He looked at the door again, at the stillness behind the glass, and for the first time since arriving, a quiet thought pressed its way forward, unwelcome but undeniable. This place wasn't just quiet. It was waiting. Ethan tightened his grip on the leash, feeling the tension run from Rex's body straight into his own chest like a wire pulled too thin. For a moment, he considered turning back, just stepping away from the door, telling himself he would come again tomorrow when things felt more normal, more certain. But the memory of Lily's voice would not let him. He exhaled slowly and took a step forward, then another, until the glass door stood just inches away. Up close, the reflection shifted, no longer just sky and snow, but his own face staring back at him, older than he remembered, lined with the quiet weight of too many decisions. Rex moved reluctantly, his paws soft against the concrete, his body brushing close to Ethan's leg as if anchoring himself. The handle felt cold under Ethan's hand. He pulled the door open and a soft chime echoed overhead, thin and almost delayed, like it had forgotten how to ring on time. Warm air met him inside, carrying the faint scent of disinfectant and something sweeter underneath, artificial, like a memory of comfort rather than the real thing. The lobby was bright, almost too bright, lit by overhead panels that hummed softly. A row of chairs lined the wall, perfectly spaced, untouched. A television mounted in the corner played a nature channel with the sound turned off. Images of rolling hills and open skies moving silently across the screen. There was no one at the desk. No voices. No footsteps. Just the low hum of electricity and the faint ticking of a wall clock that seemed louder than it should have been. Ethan stepped fully inside, the door closing behind him with a soft click that echoed farther than expected. Rex stopped again, his nails barely making a sound against the polished floor. His head lowered slightly, nose twitching, ears shifting in small, precise movements as if mapping something invisible in the air. Ethan glanced down. "It is just a place, buddy," he said quietly, though his voice did not carry much conviction. He approached the front desk, his boots sounding heavier than usual in the silence. A clipboard lay neatly on the counter, a pen placed exactly parallel to its edge. Everything was orderly, controlled, as if no one had disturbed it in hours. He tapped the bell once. The small metal ring cut through the stillness, sharp and brief, then vanished. For a second, nothing happened. Then, from a hallway beyond the desk, a figure appeared. A woman in her mid-40s, dressed in pale blue scrubs, her posture straight, her expression composed in a way that felt practiced rather than natural. She walked toward him with measured steps, each one even, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice smooth, almost too smooth, like it had been shaped to sound reassuring. "Can I help you?" Ethan nodded once. "I am here for my daughter, Lily Cole." The woman's smile did not change, but something in her eyes shifted, just slightly, like a shadow passing behind glass. "Of course," she replied. "We have been expecting you." The words should have felt welcoming, but they landed differently, too precise, too prepared. Ethan rested his hand lightly on the counter, steadying himself without realizing it. "How has she been?" he asked. The woman folded her hands neatly in front of her. "Stable," she said. "We are very pleased with her progress." The answer sounded correct, but empty, like it had been used too many times before. Rex let out a low breath, almost a huff, and turned his head slightly toward the hallway. His body stiffened again, and this time, Ethan noticed something he had missed before. The floor beneath him felt different. Not uneven, not broken, just subtly hollow, like there was space beneath the surface that should not have been there. He shifted his weight, testing it, and for a brief second, he thought he felt the faintest vibration, like a distant pulse moving through the ground. He stilled. The woman was watching him now, her smile unchanged, her eyes attentive in a way that felt too focused. "She is just down the hall," she said gently, gesturing behind her. "You can see her now." Ethan nodded, but he did not move right away. Rex gave a soft, deliberate scrape of his paw against the floor, once, then again, his gaze fixed on a spot near the base of the wall where the light did not quite reach. Ethan followed that gaze, his breath slowing, his instincts sharpening in a way he had not felt in years. Something was off. Not loud, not obvious, but present, steady, waiting. He straightened, his expression settling into the quiet resolve he had carried through places far worse than this. "All right," he said. "Let us go see her." And as he stepped toward the hallway, Rex moved with him, closer than before, every muscle alert, as if he already knew they were not just walking toward a reunion, but toward a truth that had been hidden in plain sight all along. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, the kind of corridor that made distance feel uncertain, like each step did not quite match what the eyes expected. Ethan walked beside the woman in silence, his boots landing softly against the polished floor, the faint echo trailing just a fraction too long behind him. The overhead lights hummed with a steady, artificial rhythm, casting a pale glow that erased shadows instead of shaping them. Rex stayed close at his side, closer than usual, his shoulder brushing Ethan's leg with each step as if measuring the space, as if guarding something that had not yet revealed itself. The woman moved ahead of them, her pace consistent, her posture unchanged, hands folded lightly in front of her as though she were guiding guests through a place meant to be admired. "We have been focusing on comfort and stability," she said without turning around, her voice carrying easily through the narrow space. "Children like Lily benefit from consistency." Ethan nodded once, though something about the word consistency felt misplaced here, as if it described order but not care. He let his eyes drift along the walls. Framed pictures hung at even intervals, all of them the same size, the same color palette, soft landscapes, smiling children, peaceful scenes that felt less like memories and more like decorations chosen to suggest them. There were no personal items, no drawings taped crookedly to doors, no signs of life beyond what had been arranged. Rex's ears flicked suddenly. His head turned slightly to the left, toward a closed door they were passing. He slowed, just for a fraction of a second, his nose lifting, testing the air. Ethan noticed. He glanced at the door as well. It looked like all the others, plain, white, a small number printed neatly at eye level. But as they passed, he felt it again. That subtle vibration beneath his feet, faint but deliberate, like something moving far below the surface. He did not stop, but his body registered it, stored it, the way it had learned to do in places where noticing small things made all the difference. Just up ahead, the woman said, her tone unchanged. They reached the end of the hallway where it opened into a wider room filled with soft chairs and a large window that overlooked a stretch of snow-covered trees. The light here was different, warmer, almost golden, as if this space had been designed to feel safe, to reassure anyone who stepped inside. "You can wait here," she said, gesturing toward the chairs. "I will bring her out." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "I would rather see her," he said, his voice calm but firm. The woman paused for the first time, just a slight hesitation, then inclined her head. "Of course," she replied. She turned and moved to another door on the far side of the room, unlocking it with a small key card that she produced from her pocket. The door opened with a soft click, and for a moment, the air seemed to shift, cooler, quieter, like stepping into a space that held its breath. "Right this way," she said. Ethan stepped forward, Rex immediately aligning himself at his side again. As they crossed the threshold, the sounds from the hallway faded, replaced by a deeper stillness that pressed gently against the ears. The room beyond was smaller, simpler. A bed sat against one wall, neatly made. A chair beside it. A small table with a glass of water untouched. And there, near the window, sat Lily. For a heartbeat, Ethan did not move. She looked the same at first glance. Her hair fell softly around her shoulders, catching the light in familiar strands. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers loosely intertwined. But something in the way she held herself felt different, too still, too composed, like a photograph instead of a moment. "Lily," he said softly. Her name seemed to hang in the air before reaching her. Slowly, she turned her head. Her eyes met his, and for a brief second, something flickered there, something close to recognition, like a light trying to break through fog. But it faded just as quickly, leaving behind a calm, distant expression that did not quite belong to the girl he knew. Rex stepped forward before Ethan could. The dog's body tensed, his ears forward, his gaze fixed on Lily with an intensity that bordered on urgency. He let out a low, quiet whine, a sound he had not made in years. Lily's eyes shifted to him. She tilted her head slightly, studying him as if trying to place a memory that would not settle. Then, in a voice softer than Ethan remembered, she spoke. "You came," she said. The words were right. The tone was not. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not yet, but the unmistakable sense that the space between what was familiar and what was real had just grown wider than he was ready to face. Behind him, the woman remained silent, watching, her presence steady and unreadable, as if she had seen this moment many times before and already knew how it would unfold. Ethan took a slow step forward, his boots barely making a sound against the floor, as if even the ground understood that something fragile stood between what was and what should have been. "Of course I came," he said gently, though his voice carried a quiet strain beneath the calm. "I told you I would." Lily watched him, her gaze steady but distant, as if she were looking at him through something unseen, a thin layer separating memory from the present. Rex moved closer to her, lowering his head slightly, his tail still, his entire body focused on her in a way that spoke of recognition without comfort. He let out another soft whine, then stepped closer until he was within arm's reach, his nose lifting toward her hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lily's fingers shifted, just slightly, brushing against his fur. The contact was light, almost uncertain, like someone reaching for a feeling they could not quite remember. Rex froze, then leaned in just a fraction, holding still as if afraid that even the smallest movement might break something delicate. Ethan watched closely, his chest tightening as he searched her face for something familiar, some sign that the daughter he knew was still there beneath the quiet stillness. "How have they been treating you?" he asked softly. Lily blinked once, slowly, as if the question had to travel a long distance before it reached her. "It is quiet here," she said. The words came carefully, evenly spaced, like they had been practiced. "They say quiet is good." Ethan nodded, though the answer did not settle right. Quiet was not something Lily had ever needed. She had always liked small sounds, the rustle of leaves, the hum of the television, the way Rex's nails clicked softly on the floor at home. Silence had never comforted her. It had only made her feel alone. He crouched slightly, so he was closer to her level, his movements slow, deliberate. "Do you feel okay?" he asked. Lily's gaze shifted again, drifting toward the window for a brief second before returning to him. "They help me rest," she said. Again, the words were correct. The feeling behind them was not. Rex suddenly pulled back, just an inch, his ears flicking sharply as his attention shifted away from Lily and toward the far corner of the room. His head tilted, listening. Then, without warning, he stepped past Ethan and moved toward the wall, his paws silent but purposeful. He stopped near the baseboard, lowering his nose to the floor. He sniffed once, then again, more intensely. Ethan followed his movement, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Rex?" he murmured, but the dog did not respond. Instead, Rex lifted one paw and placed it against the floor, pressing lightly, then tapping once, twice, in a slow, deliberate pattern. The same behavior Ethan had seen earlier near the entrance. The same signal. Something beneath. Ethan straightened, his attention shifting fully now. He stepped closer to where Rex stood and shifted his weight onto that section of the floor. There it was again. Faint. Subtle. A hollow resonance. Barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Or unless you had learned, over years of experience, how to listen with more than just your ears. Behind him, the woman spoke for the first time since they entered. "He is very attentive," she said, her tone light, almost approving. Ethan did not turn around. "He does not do things without a reason," he replied quietly. Rex let out a low breath, then looked up at Ethan, his amber eyes sharp, alert, insistent. The message was clear, even without words. This mattered. Ethan placed his hand gently against the wall, then let it slide downward until his fingers brushed the floor. He held it there, still feeling. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, faintly, like a distant echo, a soft vibration passed through the surface. Not random, not accidental, rhythmic, controlled. He inhaled slowly, his mind beginning to connect pieces that had not yet formed a complete picture. He glanced back at Lily. She was watching him now, her expression unchanged, but something in her eyes flickered again, something small, almost hidden. Not fear. Not exactly, but awareness. As if part of her understood what he was beginning to sense, even if she could not fully express it. Ethan rose to his feet, his posture shifting, the quiet father replaced, just slightly, by something older, something trained to recognize patterns that did not belong. "How long has she been in this room?" he asked, his voice calm but firmer now. The woman paused for just a fraction of a second. "She was moved here recently," she said. "For better observation." Ethan nodded once, though the answer only deepened the unease settling in his chest. Rex stepped back to his side, but he did not relax. His body remained tense, his attention divided between Lily and the floor beneath them, as if guarding both at once. Ethan looked at his daughter again, really looked this time, beyond the surface, beyond the stillness, searching for the pieces that did not fit. And somewhere beneath, the quiet, beneath the careful words and controlled environment, he began to understand that whatever had changed here was not just about treatment or care. It was about something hidden, something deliberate, something that had been placed just out of sight, waiting beneath the surface where most people would never think to look. Ethan did not move his hand right away, keeping his fingers lightly pressed against the floor as if the truth might rise through it if he stayed still long enough. The faint rhythm came again, subtle but undeniable, like something operating beneath layers meant to conceal it. He withdrew his hand slowly and stood, his expression calm but sharpened, the kind of calm that came when uncertainty began to take shape. "I would like to see the rest of the facility," he said, his voice even, almost casual. The woman's smile held, but this time it tightened at the edges, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. "There is not much more to see," she replied gently. "We keep things simple here. It helps the children feel safe." Ethan nodded once, as if accepting the answer, though his eyes had already begun to map the room differently, measuring distances, exits, the placement of objects that did not quite belong. Rex shifted beside him, then stepped forward again, moving past the wall and toward a narrow section where the baseboard met the corner. He lowered his head and inhaled slowly, then exhaled in a quiet huff, repeating the motion with focused intensity. His tail remained still, his body aligned with purpose. Ethan watched him, then glanced at Lily. She had not moved, but her gaze followed Rex now, her eyes lingering on the same spot, as if something there held a meaning she could not fully express. "Do you spend all your time in this room?" Ethan asked her. Lily's fingers tightened slightly in her lap. "Sometimes they take me downstairs," she said. The words came softly, but this time there was something different beneath them. Not distance, not emptiness, something closer to hesitation. Ethan's attention sharpened instantly. "Downstairs," he repeated, his tone gentle, careful. Lily nodded once, her eyes drifting again, not toward the woman, but toward the floor beneath her chair. "It is quieter there," she added. "They say it helps me rest better." The room seemed to grow still around those words. Ethan felt the pieces shift inside his mind, aligning in a way that no longer left room for doubt. He turned slowly toward the woman. "I was not aware there was a lower level," he said. She met his gaze, her expression composed, but the pause this time was longer, just enough to confirm what had not yet been spoken. "It is restricted," she said finally. "Only for specialized care." Ethan held her gaze for a moment, then nodded slightly, as if he understood. But his body had already made its decision. Rex gave a soft, deliberate scrape against the floor again, then stepped back and looked up at Ethan, his amber eyes steady, unwavering. The signal was clear. This was not a question anymore. Ethan walked to the corner where Rex had been focused and crouched again, this time placing both hands flat against the floor. He pressed down more firmly, feeling for resistance, for difference. The surface gave nothing visible, but the sensation beneath was unmistakable. Hollow, structured, intentional. He let his fingers slide along the edge where the floor met the wall, searching not with sight, but with instinct. Then he felt it. A slight ridge, almost imperceptible. A seam hidden within the design, masked by precision but not completely erased. He paused, his breath steady, then pressed gently along that line. For a second, nothing happened. Then, faintly, a soft mechanical click echoed beneath his hands. It was quiet, controlled, the kind of sound meant not to be heard at all. Rex stepped forward immediately, his body alert, ears high, his attention locked on the floor as if it had just spoken. Ethan straightened slowly, his gaze lifting to meet the woman's again. Her smile was gone now, not replaced with anger or fear, but with something colder, more guarded, as if a line had been crossed that could not be undone. "Sir," she said, her voice lower now, more controlled. "That area is not for visitors." Ethan did not respond right away. Instead, he glanced back at Lily. She was watching him, really watching this time, something clearer in her eyes now, something that had not been there before. Not confusion, not distance, his decision already made. "Then I guess," he said quietly, "I am not here as a visitor." And as Rex stepped closer beside him, the silence in the room shifted again, no longer empty, no longer passive, but filled with the unmistakable sense that something long hidden was about to be brought into the light. The air in the room seemed to tighten around Ethan's words, as if the walls themselves had heard and were deciding how to respond. For a moment, no one moved. The woman stood near the door, her posture no longer welcoming but controlled, her eyes fixed on him with a quiet calculation that had replaced the earlier warmth. Rex shifted his weight forward, his body aligned with Ethan's, ears high, muscles ready, not aggressive but prepared, the way he had been trained to stand when something unseen crossed into certainty. Ethan lowered himself once more, this time not searching but confirming, his fingers finding the hidden seam again with steady precision. He pressed along the edge, slower now, feeling for the exact point where the mechanism responded. The soft click returned, clearer this time, followed by a faint release beneath the surface, like a breath finally exhaled. A narrow section of the floor shifted, almost imperceptibly at first, then just enough to reveal a thin outline that had been carefully concealed. Rex stepped back half a pace, his gaze locked on the opening as it revealed itself, his breathing steady but focused. Ethan rose, his movements controlled, his attention fully anchored to what lay beneath. He did not look at the woman again. Whatever permission had once been required no longer mattered. He crouched and placed his hand along the edge of the panel, lifting gently. The section gave way with minimal resistance, rising just enough to reveal a dark space below, not empty, but structured, deliberate. A narrow set of steps descended into shadow, lit faintly by a soft, artificial glow that pulsed in steady intervals, the same rhythm he had felt through the floor. Now, edged with restraint. "You should not go down there," she said. There was no threat in her tone, only certainty, as if she believed the statement alone would be enough to stop him. Ethan glanced back over his shoulder, his expression calm, almost detached. "You should have told me the truth," he replied. Rex moved forward again, placing himself beside the opening, his head angled downward, listening. His ears flicked once, then stilled, as if whatever lay below had already announced its presence. Ethan looked back toward Lily. She was watching him, her hands no longer perfectly still, her fingers shifting slightly against one another, the smallest sign of something returning, something waking beneath the quiet surface she had worn since he arrived. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, something passed between them, something unspoken but understood. He gave a small nod, not of reassurance, but of promise. Then he turned back to the opening and placed one foot onto the first step. The structure beneath felt solid, carefully built, not improvised, not accidental. This had been planned, maintained, used. Rex followed immediately, descending just ahead of him. Each step measured, silent, his body angled protectively as if he intended to meet whatever waited below before it reached Ethan. The light grew slightly stronger as they moved down, revealing smooth walls, clean surfaces, everything arranged with the same precise order as above. What it truly was. The space beyond the doorway felt different the moment Ethan crossed into it, as if the air itself carried a weight that had nothing to do with temperature or sound. The hum that filled the lower level grew steadier here, not louder, but more defined, like a system working with quiet precision. The lighting shifted as well, no longer the soft wash from above, but a cooler, focused glow that traced clean lines across metal surfaces and smooth walls. Everything was arranged with intent. Nothing was accidental. Rex moved ahead slowly, each step placed with care, his nose lifting, his ears making small adjustments as he mapped the unseen. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He simply advanced with the quiet certainty of something was a place built for influence, returned to what it pretended to be. Rex stepped forward again, positioning himself between Ethan and the rest of the room, his body steady, his presence unwavering. And in that moment, the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like the pause before something that could not remain hidden any longer. The weight of the folder in Ethan's hand felt heavier than paper should, as if the words inside it carried more than information, as if they held the quiet echo of everything that had been done without being questioned. He stood still for a moment, his eyes moving across the room again. But this time, nothing looked neutral anymore. The screens were no longer just patterns. The chair was no longer just furniture. Everything had a purpose now, and that purpose had been hidden behind calm voices and clean walls. Rex shifted closer, his shoulder pressing lightly against Ethan's leg, grounding him, reminding him to stay focused, to stay present. Ethan exhaled slowly and slid the folder back into its place, not out of doubt, but because he understood that what mattered now was not just knowing, but acting. He turned toward the doorway, his steps measured, controlled, the same way he had moved through uncertain ground before, not rushing, not hesitating, just advancing with intent. Rex moved ahead of him again, leading the way back through the corridor, his pace slightly quicker now, as if the direction had changed from searching to returning. The hum followed them, steady and indifferent, as if unaware that its silence had already been broken. When they reached the base of the stairs, Ethan paused for just a second, looking upward toward the faint light above. The world on the other side of that opening was still the same. Clean, ordered, quiet. But now he knew what lay beneath it, and that knowledge could not be set aside. He climbed the steps, each one bringing him back toward the room where Lily waited. Rex reached the top first, stepping through the opening with the same alert posture, his eyes scanning, his ears adjusting, making sure nothing had changed in their absence. Ethan followed, lifting himself through the concealed panel and easing it back into place behind him. The room above felt different now, even though nothing had moved. The bed remained neatly made, the glass of water untouched. The window still framed the quiet winter outside, but the stillness no longer felt empty. It felt controlled, deliberate. Lily was still by the window, but she had shifted slightly, her head turned toward the place where he emerged, her eyes watching him in a way that felt more present than before. Not fully clear, not fully returned, but closer. "You went downstairs," she said softly. Ethan stepped toward her, his movements slower now, careful not to startle whatever fragile awareness had begun to surface. "Yes," he replied. "I needed to understand something." She studied him for a moment, her fingers tightening slightly against the fabric of her clothing. "It is quieter there," she said again, but this time the words carried something else beneath them. Not reassurance, not repetition, something closer to uncertainty. Ethan crouched beside her, bringing himself level with her gaze. "Lily," he said gently, "when you are down there, do they ask you to watch things?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second, and then she nodded slowly. "They say it helps me focus," she answered. "They tell me to sit still, to keep looking." Ethan felt the truth settle deeper, not as a shock now, but as confirmation. He reached out and placed his hand lightly over hers. "You do not have to do that anymore," he said. Rex stepped closer, lowering himself beside Lily, his head resting gently near her knee, his presence steady and calm, offering something that did not need explanation. Lily looked down at him, her fingers brushing his fur again, this time with a little more certainty, a little more memory behind the movement. "He stayed," she murmured. Ethan watched her, his chest tightening, but not with fear this time. With something quieter, something stronger. "We both did," he said. Behind them, the door remained closed. The building remained silent. But the silence had changed. It no longer held control. It no longer hid the truth. Because now, someone had seen it. And once something is seen, it begins to lose the power it once had to remain unseen. Ethan stood slowly, his hand still resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. Rex rose with him, positioning himself at their side, his posture calm but ready. The room felt smaller now, not because it had changed, but because the path forward had become clear. They were not staying here. Ethan looked toward the door, then back at Lily. He understood that this was no longer about what had been done in silence. It was about what would happen next, now that the silence had finally been broken. Ethan did not rush to the door, even though every instinct in him told him to move fast, to take Lily and leave before anything in that building could shift again. Instead, he moved with quiet control, the same way he had learned long ago, when haste made mistakes and mistakes carried weight. He reached for Lily's coat draped neatly over the chair and helped her into it, his hands steady, his touch gentle, careful not to break the fragile thread of awareness that had begun to return to her eyes. Rex stayed close, his body angled slightly toward the door, watching, listening, his presence no longer tense with uncertainty, but focused with purpose. "We are going home," Ethan said softly. Lily looked at him, really looked this time, her gaze clearer than it had been since he arrived, though still touched with something distant. "Home," she repeated, as if testing the word, feeling its shape again after too long without it. He nodded. "Yes. No more quiet rooms. No more watching things that do not belong to you." Her fingers tightened slightly around his sleeve, a small movement, but one that carried more truth than anything she had said before. Together, they moved toward the door. Ethan opened it slowly, not with hesitation, but with awareness. The hallway beyond remained unchanged, bright, silent, perfectly arranged. But now he could see through it, past the order, past the calm, into the structure beneath it. Rex stepped out first, his paws silent against the floor, his head turning slightly as he checked each direction. Ethan followed, guiding Lily beside him, his hand resting lightly at her back. As they walked, The stillness of the building pressed in around them, but it no longer held power. It felt like something hollow now, something that depended on not being questioned. They reached the front lobby without interruption. The chairs remained empty. The television continued its silent images. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, marking time that had passed unnoticed by those who trusted too easily. The woman was no longer at the desk. Ethan noticed that, but he did not stop. Whatever role she had played, whatever part she held in maintaining the surface of this place, it no longer mattered in this moment. What mattered was the next step. He pushed open the front door, and cold air rushed in again, sharp and real, carrying with it the scent of winter and something else beneath it. Freedom. Rex stepped outside first, his body relaxing just slightly as his paws touched the gravel, as if the ground itself felt more honest here. Ethan guided Lily out beside him, the sky above them wide and open, the light no longer filtered through artificial panels, but stretching across the horizon without restraint. For a moment, they simply stood there. Lily inhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cold air, her eyes lifting toward the sky as if she were remembering something she had almost lost. Rex sat beside her, close but calm, his gaze no longer searching but settled, as if he knew the most important part had already been done. Ethan looked back once, just once, at the building behind them. It stood the same as before, quiet, clean, untouched on the surface. But now he understood what it was. And more importantly, he understood what it was not. It was not a place of care. It was not a place of trust. And it would not remain hidden. He turned away, his decision already made, his path clear in a way it had not been in years. As they walked toward the truck, Lily's hand found his, small and steady, her grip stronger than before. "You came back," she said quietly. Ethan glanced down at her, a faint warmth breaking through the weight he carried. "I always will," he replied. Rex trotted beside them, his steps even, his presence constant, the silent witness to everything that had been seen and everything that would come next. And somewhere between the cold air and the open road ahead, something shifted, not in the world behind them, but in the space within them. Because sometimes, the moment you choose to see the truth is the moment everything begins to change.